Hello everyone, my name is Jesse Maurer and I'm the Worship and Creative Arts Pastor here at Maple City Chapel. I want to welcome you to today's podcast. For today's conversation, our lead pastor, Dr. Jay Shetler, sits down with three men from our congregation, Dean Miller, Harry Musser, and Michael Shetler, to hear their stories and tackle the heavy topic of sexual addiction. I want to give a pretty strong warning before this one that discretion is advisable when listening to this, as the content is definitely directed to our more mature audiences. With that, let's jump into this powerful, vulnerable, raw conversation. Here's Pastor Jay.
Any questions before we start?
Are the Colts going to win?
Yeah. I just saw that they are the only team, they have the longest active losing streak in the opening games. Like, they haven't won an opening game in like over 10 years. I think it's like since 2012, 2013.
Since Peyton left.
Yeah, literally. It's like the Peyton curse.
I'm salty about football since Notre Dame lost their opening game this season.
That was a rough start, for sure.
Salty.
Yeah, it was rough.
It was by a field goal, though, so I'm not too mad. But
Yeah.
At least made a game of it.
Could have been worse.
Yeah.
For sure.
I only watched first half, and I thought, oh,
I didn't want to watch it after the first half.
This is not going to go well. Well, I have been really looking forward to this conversation, and I'm excited that we're sitting down to record this. And I thought maybe the first thing is we just go around and introduce ourselves so that people would know who they're hearing from today. So, you want to start? Let us know who you are, maybe how long you've been attending Maple City, and anything else you want to tell us.
Yeah, so my name's Michael. I've been attending Maple City probably my whole life, you would say. I kind of took like a 7-8 year hiatus with school. I was at IUPUI, now IUI, for an undergraduate degree in social work, and then Fuller Seminary the past 3 years for a master's degree in divinity. But finally back, I get to call this church my church home again. I actually am working here as well as an administrative assistant in the NextGen department with Todd Miller and Jordan Pearson. So blessed to be back in so many different ways, and excited to pour back into the ministry in any way that I can. And I guess more personal stuff. Currently single, big sports junkie. Love that kind of stuff. Your typical guy's guy. Board game nights every month is my specialty. So
That's awesome.
yeah.
Cool. All right. Thanks, Michael.
I'm Dean Miller, and I'm married to my wife, Rhea. We have 2 boys that are married and have 6 grandchildren. We've attended Maple City just coming up on 7 years and thoroughly enjoy it. And I also enjoy sports.
I know one of your roles here, too, is you lead our men's ministry.
I do. I have a great group of guys that we all just work together as a team to put the events on, the Saturday morning breakfasts, and then the special events, and it's just been a lot of fun. Those guys are really good to work with.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
And my name is Harry. I'm married as well. My wife's name is Heather, and we have 2 kids. My daughter actually just turned 3 on August 30th, and my son will turn 1 on September 12th. Nice. So they grow too fast, man. No one tells you that. Yeah. But yeah, I've been attending Maple City for consistently 2 years, but kind of off and on before that for another 5 probably.
Okay.
Didn't really grow up in a church setting, so it was really hard for me to kind of wrap my brain around, and it was shoved down my throat by others that were believers. So I was just like, well, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen on my terms. So we had some really awesome people, like some of your guys' family, and they introduced me to God, and I fell in love with the whole thing, and here I am.
That's awesome. I should probably introduce myself too. Jay, lead pastor here at Maple City, and I'm married to Beth. Got a son, Michael. Got a daughter, Hannah, as well, living in California. And part of what I was looking forward to about this conversation is just some of the differences here. You mentioned not growing up in church. Dean and I are from, the 1900s. So,
Hey, 99, I think counts as 1900s, right?
There you go.
So, we grew up kind of in different eras, but, so it'll be interesting to see how some of this conversation goes. But the point of the podcast, we're kicking off a class called 7 Pillars of Freedom coming up shortly here. and it's designed to help men who are wrestling with pornography or other kinds of unwanted sexual behavior to find freedom. And, you know, shame and secrecy plays such a huge role in keeping men in bondage. And, yeah, secrecy leads to shame leads to secrecy, which leads to isolation. And, you know, sometimes I talk about battle buddies. We need battle buddies to get through this together. So the point of this conversation is to let other men know that there are others who struggle. We just did a sermon series, Not Alone, and this is one of those areas where we want people to know they're not alone and that we can talk about this. So, yeah, we're going to talk about pornography, talk about our own journeys through this, and the goal is to let other men know that, yeah, they're not alone. So I want to thank you guys for your willingness to talk about this. It's not an easy subject. I've probably been talking about this openly for 20 to 25 years, and every time I still get, you know, my stomach doesn't feel good. I still feel shame connected to it. I feel nervous about talking about it, so I know how hard it can be, and so thank you for your willingness to do that.
Absolutely.
Sure.
And I thought we'd just start by talking about, like, when did pornography first enter your story? Like, how, kind of your first exposure, and how did that go? And, you know, this is not scripted, so whoever wants to jump in first would, and share a little bit about your first, journey with that.
So since I'm from the 1900s, my experience started with magazines, and I had a relative that had a small collection, and when I came upon it, it piqued my interest, partly out of curiosity and partly out of just the idea that, you know, this is really taboo.
Yeah.
So,
How old would you have been?
probably 12 years old, something like that, 13 maybe,
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah.
Which the average age right now is 9 years old for exposure.
Crazy.
Yeah. It keeps going down.
Yeah.
We were talking about some of the stats earlier that, I don't know, it's like almost 100% of people are exposed to pornography by the time they turn 18. Like, it's almost impossible because of how pervasive it is not to run across it accidentally at some point. And a lot of first exposure is accidental. It's
Amongst both genders or just men?
it's much higher among men.
Yeah.
But what was it? Close to 80%?
It's still, so one statistic we saw said in that age range, about 65, I think it's 63% of women as well. So over half of women are experiencing it as well, which I think is an important thing to highlight. This is not just an issue that's, you know, men are struggling with.
And it's not so much that they're all necessarily struggling, but it's just, the point of that is it's just everywhere.
Right.
And it's so hard not to be exposed. So, yeah.
Yeah.
And I'll just follow up with that, since I'm also from the 1900s. Internet wasn't a thing, like it wasn't. And so I think the first thing for me was a friend who had a little booklet of different sexual positions and just gave it to me. And it was like, oh man. And I probably was 13, 14 at the time. And from there, it just whenever it kind of popped up, it wasn't something I was seeking out, but staying the night at a friend's house and someone had a video, and so it just kind of kept appearing at different times early on for me.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of started around the same age, around 12. I mean, just being brought up at school and, you know, teachers talking about like, oh, well, you got to be safe, you know. I mean, at 12, I feel like that's kind of not a conversation you should be having, but
So kind of sex ed stuff in school.
Yeah. I mean, they were handing out condoms and everything, you know, like, be safe. It's like, oh, well, okay. I don't know what this is, but sure. I mean, and unfortunately, walking in on your parents, you know.
Oh.
So that kind of was like, well, what is this going on?
That ruins some people. For the rest of their
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, God bless you,
100%.
soldier.
Yeah, it just spiked my curiosity, and yeah, I mean, I just kind of started watching it and getting more curious, and it actually kind of led me into getting into trouble later down the road. So I don't know how deep we want to get into these things, but I mean, I can share something that I haven't really shared with a lot of people, but
Sure.
so it kind of spiraled out of control for a little bit at that early age, and I just got overly curious, and I had a little brother that we're 8 years apart, and I ended up sexually molesting my little brother, and I got in trouble. Like I got I guess found out or caught, and police were involved, and I went through all the proper motions. I was in therapy for probably 5 years, and in and out of going to court and stuff. I never went to jail or anything, but him and I have a different mom, so
Okay.
she was pushing really hard to get me jail time, and
Wow.
she was obviously really hurt by it, and I really didn't know what was going on because I didn't understand, one, what I was doing was wrong because I was really young, and two, what I was even really doing, So, I was on probation for a couple of years, and, went through all that, doing community service and everything, kind of, paying my dues, and I've since kind of tried to bury it, but
Yeah.
really only super close people to me know about it, but that's about a handful. But yeah, it's hard. It just grabs a hold of you in every aspect and controls you, and obviously then it kind of stemmed into my later years, and it wasn't until recently, like right before I did the wave, what was that, like 5 months ago maybe, that I had started to kind of feel, like, man, I shouldn't be doing this, and it was almost on a routinely basis, and I was like, you know what, I think at the way I'm going to say something, I'm going to bring it up, like it needs to come to light. Like I just felt condemned to, to speak up, and just kept weighing heavy on my heart, and I confessed to all these men at the way, and then later when I went home, I confessed to my wife, and we definitely had our struggles, but we're working through it, and I would say our marriage is a lot better than it was before, just because I'm not hiding anything anymore.
Good.
We definitely want to dig into some of that journey deeper, but thank you for sharing that first part. I think it's part of what makes this subject so complex, is that there's different ways. Yeah. I was sexually abused as a kid as well, and regardless of which end, there's a lot of shame that gets added on to that, and so it just makes this subject even more complicated. And
well, it's hard not to make it a part of you either. Obviously it's part of your journey. It happened, but like not to let it consume you. It's difficult.
Yeah. You gonna say more about how kind of it started for you?
Yeah, and I think just also applauding your just vulnerability, Harry, and how, I think we're going to get into this later, but just the power of just being transparent and vulnerable and not keeping it built inside is just so powerful, so freeing. That's definitely part of my story as well, is getting to a point where you're able to actually talk about it, recognize it, and just, I remember the first time sharing about it with a group, there being so many guys just coming up to me and being like, I thought I was the only one.
Yeah.
And you being able to share that just is this weight off of my shoulders. And it's just surprising, even talking about the statistics, like how often it's occurring in people's lives, but how frequently we feel like we're the only ones. And we're particularly dirty or particularly wrong for going through these experiences, I think, especially as Christian men. But I think, my early exposures were, I think, interestingly enough, with magazines as well. I think the very first memory I have was at a friend's birthday party, and I think I was also probably 10, 11. And one of the guys had brought like a magazine and was like showing pictures off, and like all the other guys were just like in awe, like, no, I have no idea what like this is really. Right. Like there's an aspect of like curiosity. There's an aspect obviously of attraction. I just remember feeling confused in my feelings, like feeling attracted, feeling like, oh, I want to see this, but then also recognizing that there are some problematic aspects of it as well, and even not 100% knowing how to articulate it, but just dealing with all these feelings and ultimately feeling like you can't share these things. Immediately that kind of sent me down a road of like, okay, figuring things out almost on my own, because there's no way I can share this kind of thing. It's too confusing. I can tell that there's some like bad aspects of it that could be producing shame and might look bad on me if it came out to light, kind of thing. And so trying to deal with it myself at like 12 years old, but then also like your interest is peaked, you're going through puberty, like your sexual exploration is kind of happening just biologically. And so being drawn towards other things, and slowly it goes from magazines till then you're on the internet and something pops up, like an ad, or you're on a TV show and just a scene pops up, or those types of things. Like, that was another thing that we saw, is like how prevalent it is on just the internet, and how a lot of first exposure is non-intentional, that things are just popping up everywhere, and that there's an intentional pursuit of individuals to get them almost addicted or connected to this type of medium. And so I think that same thing kind of happened once you get a cell phone, you have that kind of access, the teen years kind of going down that route of eventually just like needing more, wanting more, continuing, and hiding. Those two things came hand in hand, and it was a really devastating combination.
Crazy to see even in like movies these days. Like everything's sexual at some point, you know.
And that's, I remember having gone through the struggle and then being a parent and be like, okay, I do not want my son to have to go, and part of the anger and realizing how persistent the porn industry is in marketing, or trying to get early exposure, because the earlier you're exposed, the more likely you are to be a heavy user, and so just doing anything and everything they can to you know, suck young men and women, boys and girls, into that. I'm curious what your experience was. You mentioned feeling like you couldn't really share that. Did your parents at any level talk about healthy sexuality, pornography? Were you prepared in any way to deal with the reality of pornography?
I would say for me, not really. I mean, it was hard growing up too, because it's like my parents split at a young age, so like dad was just always working, so at a lot of points I was kind of on my own. So I mean, it was just me, myself, and I, and my curiosity. So I mean, I think that made it a lot worse for me too.
So the combination of no real education and lack of supervision on top of that.
100%. Yeah.
I'd say for me, my parents never said a word about sexuality in any shape or form. It was sort of a taboo subject and everything. And I grew up in a Christian home. I admire my parents' faith, and they did the best that they could at the time, I believe. So, yeah,
definitely taboo. I mean, I can identify it. Like, I think my dad had one conversation with me that lasted maybe 1 or 2 minutes. He talked, and then that was the end of the. So I wouldn't look at it as a overly helpful. And there was also, like, my parents were busy in ministry early on at that age, and so I think lack of supervision played a part in that for me too. Like, it just didn't seem like there was much attention given to that area.
Yeah, I think for me, there's a couple of things that come to mind. There was definitely intentional conversation early on. I know one conversation specifically, kind of having the talk with you. I think we were driving to like a Colts game or a Cubs game, and you like locked me in the car, and he's not getting out of this, you know, like every like 13-year-old's nightmare is like, so
you're going to learn today.
And you're just like banging on the door. It's like, I'm on the highway. I can't do much. But
exactly right. We had a 3-hour drive to Indianapolis for a Colts game. Like, this would be a great time to go into this.
Yeah. I knew it was an issue when we were listening to the radio, and it all of a sudden turned quieter, and then doors went. but no, yeah, and it was good. I remember the conversation. Obviously, I think I was again 12 years old, immediately feeling like gross, and you didn't necessarily even say anything to make it seem that way. But I know growing up, like the idea of like your private parts are private, keep them hidden, right? Like. That's where like you do stuff to go to the bathroom. That also stuff is gross and is just like not for conversation, not for just like everyday conversation, that kind of thing. I think the other component that made things really interesting is on one hand having that conversation with you, but then also being in a culture and context where like it's one thing to get things from your parents, and it's another thing to get information from like a community, whether that be a church community or just a local community. Also having like the additional pressures of being a pastor's kid, pastor's grandkid. At the time I was going to high school, my uncle was the youth pastor. So there's a lot of these really strong male figures in my life. And to me, I recognized I was almost like deifying them in some ways. Like, from my perception, these guys are perfect and they're the exemplification of what godly men are. And we didn't have specific conversations, to my knowledge, about pornography until I brought it up to you that it was something I was struggling with. We did have the first talk, but then after that, it was kind of just like, I don't know, I think I just associated in our initial conversation, like, this is a reality, and it's something that is beautiful, but in my mind, I didn't comprehend it as beautiful. I comprehended it as gross. Mm-hmm. And then associating that then with the things that I was watching, there being an additional shame element, grossness element to it, on top of the cultural aspects and just my personal aspects in relation to my Christian faith and being pure. Sexual ethics is like such a strongly emphasized thing in church, and especially in youth group, like really hitting that hard, I remember, in youth group. And so all of those things, I think, combine to make this desire to hide and to keep things quiet, not being vulnerable and admitting that you are the one person in your line of perfect male, archetypes and family members that is letting everybody down, that kind of pressure.
So do you think it made it harder for you, like, coming from that kind of background and having those kind of men, like, moving forward with it? Like, it just made it harder?
Yeah, I mean, it really felt difficult. And it's so interesting because I don't know if I ever felt like you were an unsafe place. Like, I always would have considered you a safe place, but I think I was also, like, just very conscious of disappointing you, disappointing, like, the family legacy or just, like, Maple City Chapel. Like, in my mind, I'd put this pressure that I was, like, for some reason, this exceptional representation or representative of Maple City Chapel because of that. And so that additional pressure of not wanting to say anything that could ruin anything, really. Mm-hmm.
It's been interesting because we spent a lot of time processing this topic over the last number of years, and I think Beth and I would feel like we talked about this nonstop with them. Like, we talked about it, and we're comparing it to nothing, no conversation. And there are something, like, we did, the youth group had this whole, like, purity event, and we'd go on a walk and fill out I think there's, like, when you don't talk about it at all, it sends a message of this is a shameful thing. And when you elevate it at some level and make it like the worst sin ever, you set it up to be a shameful conversation. And I think we went, this was my experience, and knowing we kind of went to the other extreme in making it, in some ways, such a big deal that it still created shame around it. So this is probably a whole different topic for a whole other podcast, but just as parents, like, how do we do this well? How do parents really, we wanted to bring it up when you were young enough yet, because people are being exposed at 9. Like, like, I wanted to have the conversation before that. And then yet it felt like maybe it was too soon. This is gross. Like, so that's a hard, I don't know if you had thoughts on that too or not.
Yeah. One of the things, just by bringing it up, trying to become comfortable in having a conversation about it instead of having to feel uneasy about it and everything. And it's sad that God created something like sex to be a good event, produce offspring, and to be pleasurable and that sort of thing. But yet, the enemy has his way of making us all feel uncomfortable and uneasy about it.
Yeah.
That's one thing, like, you were talking about, being a parent and, like, how to approach that. Like, that's one thing I think about all the time, being a young dad, like, how am I going to do that? How do I keep my kids from going down the same path as me and, falling into this foothold and, because it just consumes you.
Yeah. That's good. Let's maybe go into that path a little bit more, like, and how did from first exposure, kind of how did that pattern of use go for you guys? And was there kind of a particular point where it was at its worst for you? And I can share, like, it did feel like for us it was kind of this escalating thing. Being from the 1900s, internet came in. It was, so a whole new thing to kind of deal with. And over time, I think that just as availability grew, then my use increased. And the third year of our marriage, so 3 years into marriage, Beth knew nothing about this. And we had moved, we met while I was in school at Fuller, got married, strong support system there, lots of good friends, moved to Fort Wayne for an internship and knew nobody. And we had a year there, 3 years into our marriage, where we just really hit kind of a marriage crisis. Beth was struggling with some depression. I was making many mistakes as a husband. But all that kind of culminated in just increased porn use. Like that year was probably the year where it really escalated the most. It's one of those things I look back on with it in that day and age. It wasn't just internet. It's going into a movie rental place and, renting a video. And, I think there was something about being in Fort Wayne where I felt like nobody knew me that all of a sudden opened up this I can do this and nobody would know.
Yeah.
But still remember the shame of walking up to a counter, looking someone in the eye and rent, like it just,
Yeah.
But that at that point, the addiction to pornography was stronger than that shame. And so that we moved from there back to this area and had a much better support system. And I'll save the rest of the story, but that's really where it intensified the most for us in that year. And I think it went with the marriage, the isolation, the marriage struggles, and all those things helped intensify that.
I think for me, it intensified. Obviously, it always kind of continued from an early age, but then I would say it wasn't like on a super consistent basis until like my wife and I got together and we started having our daughter and stuff, and obviously there's those parts where the kids kind of taking up a lot of the time, and it was just kind of like, oh well, it just got really bad there for a while, and I'd say it kind of fizzled out as she got older, and because our kids are about 2 years apart, and so around 2, then it was kind of not really consistent, almost non-existent at that point, and my wife and I were, intimate regularly, and but then once we were like, oh well, we're pregnant with another one, it just spiraled back down again, and I don't know if it was in my head, like kind of subconsciously, like, oh well, I need something to fill that void, so this was that familiar thing that had been in my life, so I just kind of fell into it. But it's not fun. And the entire time you know what you're doing is wrong, and you feel that regret, but you can't do anything about it. It's hard.
I think for me, it getting a look at it at 13, and then gradually, just from time to time through the teen years, I would see different magazines and everything like that, but it wasn't a constant thing. Where it really began to blossom was when we gained the internet in our home, and then when we started to get smartphones. And so, unfortunately for me, it was something that I dealt with for many years. And, I confessed to some of my close male friends that were Christians and everything, but it was tough to find somebody that wanted to would help me be accountable for it. And so, the escalation, I guess, came really when internet came and smartphones and that sort of thing for me.
Yeah, it's amazing, the psychological research that shows that if you can do something anonymously, you're more likely to engage in some kind of behavior that you know is wrong. And all of a sudden, you didn't have to walk into a video rental store anymore. It's in your pocket. And that just escalated. I think that's partly why the stats have gone so high with the amount of people struggling with it, because you can do it anonymously. and the ease of access is there. And
There's also, a myth out there that, well, I'm just doing this. Nobody else is around. I'm the only one it affects.
Right.
So it doesn't hurt anybody else.
Yeah.
But that is a lie. It does hurt me. It hurts my relationship with my wife, between God and I. And, yeah. So
that's such a good point.
Yeah.
That for me, that was part of my rationalization for continue. Like,
Yeah.
well, this isn't hurting anybody.
Yeah.
And as long as I could believe that, then it allowed me to continue. But
Because it makes you feel alone. It makes you feel isolated.
yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah. I think for me, definitely going in seasons, and I kind of identify kind of 3 different, I guess, feelings that would amplify the tendency of me to go towards that as a relief. I think loneliness being one, when you're kind of by yourself, you're maybe bored, don't have a lot to do. There is kind of that doom scroll tendency. And for me anyway, it's so often that results in something popping up, right? Just the likelihood. And then that's sending your brain into that mode of thinking to then it's almost like this fixation that eventually leads you to that point. I think the other thing is anxiety, which I think I experienced a lot in school, like definitely even more recently than I'd even like to admit. But grad school and undergrad, going through particularly stressful times, busy seasons during the school year, just needing a time to just release stress. And that always felt like a consistent, like pleasurable release as it is. Like it was just this thing that I could depend on to give me relief from the anxiety and fear that I was dealing with. I think sadness also, same kind of thing where it's like I knew that was a consistent space to feel like good. It's temporary good, but the immediate good was like better than the sadness I was feeling at that moment. And then a really interesting thing that I found myself more recently, I guess, wrestling with was this almost intentional, I'm not sure how to even phrase this, but a combating of what I felt were unhealthy Christian stances on sexual ethics. So almost using it as a form of rebellion against the purity culture that I felt had warped me in such a bad way, where I was like, this is something that's hurt me way more than whatever, the gratification that I've got from porn is. So like, screw that. I'm going to like go down this path because I feel like the purity culture that the Christian evangelical tradition can sometimes produce was almost more harmful in my mind. And so it was almost like a form of rebellion against what I had felt had been a wronging by my faith.
Yeah. As you guys look at your pattern of use, and some of you have kind of talked about this a little bit, but can you identify your vulnerabilities? Like when are you most likely to feel vulnerable? You mentioned some of the like depression or anxiety or stress or any thoughts on that? Like what makes you vulnerable, do you think? You kind of talked about, seasons of life when, babies and it affects the frequency of intercourse and things like that. And
Yeah, I'm up to, I guess more recently up before the weigh and stuff. It was just pretty much any time that I could find myself being alone, like, the wife's still at work, I'm at home with the kids, like the kids just go play, we'll just kind of sneak off and like, you don't even really think about it. I mean, for me at least, it was like, well, I'm just going to go do this. Just like it was a daily chore,
Yeah.
And then, you go about your business and you're like, oh, well, I probably shouldn't have done that.
Were you, so you weren't raised necessarily in a Christian home?
No.
Were you brought up, like, where does I think there's we were talking earlier about you listen to podcasts and like, there's some ways in which the secular world would say, well, that's not wrong. Like, where did your guilt come from? Like, where did you learn to think?
I would say I really didn't start feeling any sense of guilt, or any really realization that what I was doing was anywhere close to being wrong, until I met my wife. Just because she did grow up in a Christian home, and her family was ex-Amish and stuff, so they're very strict on things for her daughter, and so it was just kind of like holding yourself accountable for things and just like, oh, well, maybe what I'm doing isn't right here, you know?
Yeah.
But it definitely grew as time went on, and becoming friends with Luke and Tasha, and you know, kind of exploring, you know, Jesus and the curiosity there, and then kind of hearing, you know, in your sermons, you know, how open you are about things, and then Luke sharing how open, you know, about him going through the same thing, and
Wow.
I was just like, yeah, this isn't right. And it really got to the point where I was so angry with myself. Like if I could have fought myself, I would have fought myself. I mean, I was so angry to the point where I was kind of mad at the world in a sense. Like, and I kind of found myself like, you know, being new to faith, almost blaming God for my problems. Like, well, you know, you're perfect. Why can't you just make us perfect?
Yeah.
You know, why, you know,
Yeah.
why do we have to have these faults? Why do we have to go through this?
Yeah. You're definitely tapping into it, that, like, and I think a lot of men identify a sense of desperation almost. Like, I don't want to do this, and that's kind of the addictive nature of it. I don't want to do this, and then that shame if I did it again, and some of this just the repeated pattern, being successful for a season, and then you know, and the cycle continues again, and yeah, a lot of men can identify with that, I think.
I just kind of kept having, I mean, especially after it came to light, and you know, through the way, you know, through that whole weekend, just kept talking about it more and more. I just after I shared, you know, I didn't want to just leave it dead in the water. I wanted to just keep talking about it, and just kind of admitting, you know, out loud that, you know, it wasn't God's fault. You know, it's you know, as you stated earlier, you know, the enemy, he gets his foothold, and but yeah, I mean, just finding that realization amongst myself, amongst everybody, that, you know, this isn't okay.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good.
That you can heal, you can move forward.
Yeah.
I think for me, it's boredom is one big issue. I think stress also. Sometimes it was from a job. A number of years ago, it was from situations at church, and so the stress just comes in different ways and different forms. But
One of the areas where early in our marriage, I've gotten a lot better. My wife has really helped me grow in being more assertive as a human being, but I was not very assertive at all. And so one of my vulnerabilities was when it came to if I wanted sex, it's like, okay, my desire was higher than hers. I don't want to upset her. And it was easier just, rather than deal with that conflict and work it out, I'll just deal with it on my own. And so it really was an escape in some ways of having to do the hard work of conflict in a relationship and working out, you know, my needs, her needs, and how do we, you know, come to a mutually satisfying kind of place in a relationship. So one of the things we've kind of alluded to here and there is shame along the way. I'm curious to get your thoughts more on, like, what role did shame play in your journey and kind of keeping you stuck at some level?
Yeah, I think shame is like the name of the game for me, the most massive influence, I think, in this journey. I think because of the reasons I described earlier in terms of like the expectations I had put on myself to meet this almost perfect ideal of like Christian manhood, falling short of that, and the fear of letting down not only myself, my creator, my family, my church, my community, all those pressures just swamped me with feelings of shame and aspects of self-hatred like you talked about, Harry. And it was just this vicious cycle of feeling like you're almost trapped in a sense of I can't necessarily get out of this fully. But then immediate self-loathing following those experiences, like such a weird, like love-hate relationship, like one that I could never describe. And it's interesting even we're talking about relationships. This might be another rabbit hole, but I had just gotten out of a 1.5-year relationship, but in that relationship, I found myself, even though there was shame associated with the pornography, there was also a sense of reliability or an ideal of like sexual safety and dependability. Whereas when I was with a partner and there's this expectation of connectivity and even potential intimacy, that fear almost drove me more towards the pornography, because I'm growing up in kind of that purity culture and the abstinence push in healthy sexuality. This fear of like, there's been so much shame in this ideal of pornography, being afraid of bringing that shame and associating that shame with someone you love. It's terrifying to the point where you don't even want to risk it. In my case, I didn't even want to risk doing any kind of like intimate engagement at all with this person for fear of the same cycles of shame being put on that person, to then where I thought of this person or being close with this person, I'd feel that same level of self-hatred and shame. And I'm like, I cannot do that to a person that I love. And so the weird, like twisted result was that instead of engaging in intimacy with a partner, I would just go and engage with myself and just continue like that cycle, which then pushed the same messaging. And it was just, again, a vicious cycle. I don't know in marital relationships if there's maybe similar experiences in some way in terms of the pull or push against like your connectivity with your significant other. But as someone who was in that dating relationship, who was like, had a lot of like pressure to like remain abstinent, but still wanting to engage in forms of intimacy, and that whole journey, it was pretty intense for sure.
So would you say, like, I guess, like, as you were talking about that, it kind of was like you used pornography as like putting a lock on that relationship, the aspect of your relationship, so like that you wouldn't explore that.
Yeah, like the fear was just that if I engage in any kind of intimacy at all with a significant other, it could have the potential of feeling the same levels of guilt and shame that pornography did. And that thought terrified me, to think that I could think of a loved person with the same amount of hatred that I feel towards this issue of pornography.
Yeah, I think for me, I describe shame as like a heavy blanket over my life, because I was deeply involved in church as well, and held, various positions in church, and, how could I be doing this and then go to church and put on the happy face or whatever it might be. And that was a real struggle, and that was probably the greatest form of freedom I felt once I finally got relief, was that Jesus took our shame away as well. And I was so thankful for that.
Yeah, I think that experience was so powerful for me too, and just living with that secret for 3 years. It is one of the more isolating feelings, and I think that to me it goes back, like, there's so much the Genesis story of creation explains about human nature and stuff, but before sin there was no shame, and as soon as sin enters the picture, you have shame, you have fear, and you have hiding. And so that shame, I just wanted to hide. And so, but then the heaviness of that is, and just you just kind of self-loathing. I mean, it was this definite feeling of, and then it just kind of consumes, like, does God forgive me again? Like, after the how much time, and it's just a heavy thing to, and then finally sharing it where it's not just my secret was an amazing thing. And that would be interesting to go down that. Like, what was the experience like for you to finally share it with somebody? Like, who did you first share that with, and how did that shift the battle?
I would say for me, I really didn't, it's hard. Like, I kind of talk amongst, like, I guess friends or acquaintances, at school, like, oh yeah, like I watched, porn, but didn't think anything of it, because then it kind of gave you that, I guess, taboo feeling, or that like, oh, I'm cool because I do this. So like,
So it wasn't like a repentance kind
right.
of thing.
Like other kids would brag about it, like, oh yeah, like I've seen this, da 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 da. But really, like, really talking about it and like realizing that it was becoming an issue. I would say probably wouldn't be until I started my faith journey. And even then, it was still secretive because, like, I would listen to, like, Luke talk about it, and Tasha talking about the problems that they had in their marriage and stuff because of it, and then listening to you talk about it, I would just kind of purposely step back, and I would kind of just sit back and listen, and I'm just like, nope, I'm not saying anything, nope, because I'm afraid of being judged, and obviously you guys done the same thing, but it still made me feel like, oh, well, they're going to think that I'm less because I do this,
Yeah.
And then, like I said, coming into the way, that was like the real first, like, big admittance, of, this is what I'm doing. I want help. I need help, and I kind of latched on to a couple different guys in that weekend and prayed about it more than I can even count. And I mean, there's a portion in the way where you can write down like your sins or your problems and you nail it away, and just the moment you take that swing, it's like immediately you feel lighter. I mean, it's crazy, but
That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah. There's nothing quite like that feeling of, you're like in the way. So you're a group of men and sharing it with those men and feeling their, instead of judgment, feeling the grace and the love in spite of that. And that representing Jesus really in that for you.
Because never once does anybody say like, oh, well, you have that problem. There's something wrong with you.
Yeah.
They're always like, I identify, this is, I had similar things. Find a way to connect with you.
Yeah. I do want to quickly add, I think it is actually really commendable, but also potentially rare as well for a senior pastor in a church to be so open about this and be so understanding about how much of a reality it is, and not meeting people who share these struggles with judgment or any kind of like harshness, but with grace and love and understanding. Like, I think a lot of us, even in hearing our conversation, might be like, oh, it sounds easy to just share about it. But the truth of the matter is, a lot of people go to their churches and share these things and are met with harshness and are met with like the things that we fear, judgment and feelings of disgust. And it's like, you need to get that taken care of before you can ever come back here kind of attitude. And so, I don't know, I just wanting to name that, and just like the power and freedom of being able to share it with someone who receives it with grace and love and understanding and empathy, with this commitment to work with you through this, as opposed to a command to, you need to change before you can be welcome here. But again, this idea of like belonging and believing and then becoming, it's that feeling of like, you're here as you are, you belong, we're going to walk with you until we get to that belief and then that becoming who we're supposed to be in Christ. But I think my first time sharing was with you, and I just remember being kind of at an all-time low in my struggles and feeling like on my last limb, basically, saying like, I've tried everything myself, nothing's worked, nothing's come close to working, I need to try something different. It was just this ultimate desperation, not exactly knowing how you would respond, but being like, it just, something has to change, and I'm not going to just sit here and just continue to like submit myself to this. And going to you, sharing, and just, I remember sharing with you and kind of just waiting for your reaction. And I just remember you sitting there kind of just attentive. And then after I got done sharing, you smiled at me and you said, I love you and it's okay. And you gave me a big hug. And it was just like a wave, just like, they talk about chains like breaking, like that was probably the closest I've ever experienced to just like chains just shattering to the floor, where all your fears that have just been consuming you and keeping you, it's like that masterful tool of the enemy to just like keep it within So then all you're telling yourself is the lies that are being told to yourself. And you just need that alternative perspective of love and acceptance to like break some of those chains and messages. And for you to be able to do that and be like, I'm going to walk with you through this was just absolutely amazing. And not only to even have that one experience, but then you let me know both then and afterwards that it's going to involve, like, I'm going to hold you accountable. I'm going to ask you about this. Like, you still to this day will periodically ask me. You asked me earlier today, just how are you doing with this? And not even in a way of like, you got this figured out. It's what's going on? How you doing with this? How can I help? Like that type of
genuine care.
Yeah. The care, as opposed to like, we need to fix this before you can be accepted kind of attitude. There's just, I never felt that. And I consider myself extremely lucky. I think a lot of folks have experienced that type of reaction, especially from the church and Christian brothers and sisters in their lives. So yeah.
I think that was something that kind of held me back in my faith journey, you know, being new to everything. Like, I wanted to grow and I wanted to grow quick. Like, I was like, I'm really intrigued with all this. I feel like all the right questions in my head, you know, but knowing I had that, I was like, well, I'm never going to be one of them, you know, because I have this and it's holding me back. And that was a big part of, you know, shame too. And so I felt like I couldn't grow with my relationship with God just because I was letting this consume me. And so it almost made me feel like, in a way, I was kind of behind the 8 ball with my relationship with him. And I already felt that way because I didn't grow up in a church. So I just kept like, oh, well, I got some ground to make up here. You know, like, I got all these people around me that are, you know, avid believers, and they've been in it all their life. And I'm just like, well, you know, maybe I need to run a little bit here. But I think that was part of why I like having a lot of conversations with you, is just because you almost brought me down to earth in that sense of like, you gotta, you know, it's a lot like raising children. They gotta learn to, you know, crawl before they can walk, and then walk before they can run. And I think in turn that kind of helped me, you know, let it out and grow in that.
That's good.
Yeah,
that's good. My journey of sharing at first was not a choice. I got caught. I mean, that's how it first came out. And then it was, well, I'll own up to what I got caught for, but not the full. And that, I think, one of the lessons that I walked away with, and then trying to help other men is, man, like that can be the tendency. Like I don't want to hurt Beth, so I'm going to share just this little bit, but then more comes out and more comes out and more comes out. And from my experience, it's the betrayal that's painful, but it's the breaking of trust that can be so hard to undo that damage. And the more you like give half truths, the more you're breaking trust again and again and again and again. And so it took a while. It took a while to be fully honest about the struggle, and get to the point where, and I will say that I had a similar experience where, you know, once we worked through the initial hurt, then I had an amazing teammate in Beth. And it wasn't that when I would mess up that it didn't hurt her anymore. But she found a way to just join me in that struggle, rather than condemn me in it, and be a support person for me in that. And that I could not have, you know, got through without that kind of support person. And then that to me started a journey of just sharing it with other people, because I found that secrecy was such a powerful tool of the enemy, and shame is such a powerful tool. And so then I would share it with a few friends, and then share it with a men's group, and then share it with, you know, at this point we've shared it just about anywhere. So, and each time it's like, it's just empowering. And there's always fear of judgment that comes with it. And I can't control what everybody thinks. There may be some people who feel, you know, whatever, but by far it's had a bigger effect of empowering other men to talk about their own struggles. And that's why I do it. That's why I keep talking about it. So.
For me, I think I had shared it with some Christian men friends that I had and stuff like that. And didn't have as much effect as when the first time I confessed it to Rhea. And that was one of the hardest things I ever did. But she was so gracious and kind about it. And like you said, was more like a teammate after that, and just helping me to deal with it, being open to not really on her part, not wanting to necessarily talk about it because it's uncomfortable, but she would, and she did. And that was truly amazing.
Yeah. What you were in a relationship, you're single now.
Yeah.
The rest of us are married. When you think of that, the relational stress, breaking trust, it's also like, I think Beth and other women would say, like they struggle with self-image stuff then. Like, why are you looking here? Like, what does that say about me? And it causes all kinds of pain and disrupts the relationship in a lot of ways. How did you go about working at repairing the relationship? Like, what did you do to try to build trust again? What was helpful for your significant other or your spouses when it came to rebuilding trust again?
I mean, I think for me, a lot of it is I'm very reactionary. So when she would share, like, oh, well, am I not enough for you? Or, are these other women that you've seen, are they more attractive? Do you not find me attractive? And so, being very reactionary, like, I want to fix it right away. So, like, I would almost in a way, like, I would mansplain everything, like, like, oh, no, it's not you, it's me. Like, that cliche line. And I kind of just found myself like, you know what, that's not working. I'm going to ask her, like, can you go more into depth? Like how this made you feel, how I made you feel. And I just tried to be more, like sit back and listen more, you know?
Wow.
And
That's awesome.
That helped more. I mean, it was hard for me too, cause I wanted to chirp in and like justify myself. And I'm like, well, if I continue to try to justify everything, I'm not growing, I'm not healing. Like I'm falling right back into that same path, even if I'm not currently like engaged in it. Like, to me, it just felt like you brought up chains, like those little chains were, kind of just grabbing back a hold again. And, so, I mean, it was easier for me to sit back and listen. And then even when she was done, I didn't try to, okay, well, you said this, so this is, what we can do. I just tried to embrace her, to hug her, to, give her the attention she felt like she needed. Whether that was, physical, mental or, but it was definitely hard. She didn't really, I feel like I've heard a lot of people say like that their wives, like pushed them away, like there wasn't any intimacy, there wasn't, they didn't really want to talk much, they kind of just closed down, and she very much so grabbed me and pulled me in more. She felt, amazing. I think it made her feel like she was going to lose me. Or in a sense, she kind of felt like she had already done that. And she tried to make it like, I guess she didn't try to make it, but she felt like it was her fault.
Gotcha.
Like it didn't span from an early age, that it was, it just happened. It was because, she wasn't doing it for me, but.
I love the way you, like, I think one of the things that shame does to us as men is it makes us want to defend ourselves. Like, so if Beth is, like sharing her hurt, well, I want to justify, rationalize, explain, and to be able to just stop and set that aside and just show true empathy and sit and listen and love and support. That's awesome. That's awesome, Harry.
Yeah. For me, I think where it changed the most was when I was in a group, and part of that group was, what are you going to do this next week to improve your relationships? And sometimes they would challenge me, on what I said or what would really work, but to really stop and listen when Rhea was talking with me, try and do things that she, around the house or whatever it may be, that she would really appreciate. And some of it involved kind of reporting back to her. Maybe that's a weird way to put it, but what was happening in the group and where I was at, and letting her know that this is not the way it used to be. This is a new and different path that I'm taking now, and I'm doing it because of you, because of me, and because I want to honor God.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. Yeah, I think in the relationships where it's been present and a relevant thing, I found, interestingly enough, that it wasn't even necessarily the act itself that was the most damaging. It was the secrecy. It was the feeling of like pulling away. It was the feeling of like, I'm supposed to be the one you love the most, and I can tell you're keeping something from me. And I remember just specifically having a conversation, and like, she's like, just explain to me like what's going on, and trying just to like admit like the best parts without being fully transparent, to almost just try and, I don't know, still feeling that guilt and shame of being totally transparent, but wanting to almost just kind of like ease into it a little bit. And her just, exactly. Like, and you tell yourself that, and then I remember her just stopping and be like, I can tell, like, I'm not dumb. I know you well enough to know when you're being fully honest with me. And it's hurting me the most that you feel like you can't be fully honest with me, and you don't see me as like a teammate that can help you through this. Like, for her, it was mostly just this desire to want to be with me and care for me, but she couldn't do that if she didn't know the full story. And obviously when the full story came out, it was devastating for her. And I think that's what kept me from wanting to do the full story, is like, I know when I do, it's going to result in a lot of pain, a lot of hurt. And my fear of like hurting her was almost overpowering. And so to keep that from happening, I wanted to like ease into it, but not knowing that that was actually contributing to the separation and the toxicity that was happening in our relationship along those intimacy lines. And so just having to be like, you know what, there's going to be pain, and that's okay. But truth ultimately, transparency ultimately, is going to be the path to freedom and reconnection. And I honestly don't think I learned that in that relationship. Like, the relationship ended, and I think it's only something that I can almost look back now and say and see, and it pains me to not have realized that in the moment, but learned a lot from that, and hoping that I can bring that then into the next relationship that I'm in.
Yeah, I think, truth telling is so important. Like, obviously if Beth found out, and then if she finds out again, and I'm not telling her, it's painful to tell her. But if she's finding out, that just, so truth telling is so important, even if it's painful. And I think transparency would be the other thing, like to be able to say, you've got my passwords, you've got my, like, you look at my phone whenever you want, like this non-defensive, I'm not a kid, don't, but no, like, I need to work at rebuilding trust, and trust takes time. Trust takes time. And so just being patient. I think for, whether you're a man or a woman, if you're the one who's involved in pornography and you experience freedom, it's like, but often your spouse just feel like they got ran over by a truck, and it's like, okay, I've got to allow now time and space, for that person to heal and be patient with that journey.
You want to move on.
It's like, I'm free. Let's go.
They're still back here because they're just now being able to comprehend it and grow from that. But I mean, it's difficult. I mean, I found for me, it was after it came to light, and I told Heather, I leaned into worship music a lot.
And
you were just talking about, you guys were talking about transparency and stuff, and like giving them access to everything. And I can't remember the name of the song for the life of me, but I believe there's like a verse. It's like all I have is out on the table. And I love that a lot. It's just because not only is it out there for them, but it's out there for God, and He's helping everything through it.
Yeah. I do want to also say real quick, and Dean, you kind of brought this up earlier, but recognizing how this experience is not just affecting you, but it's affecting those around us. And like you even talked about how even that moment of confession while freeing for us, can be devastating for those that we're telling. I remember actually getting annoyed when she was reacting the way she was. 'Cause I'm like, I'm being transparent with you. I'm sharing with you. You know how hard this is for me? Like, make this about me. And that's the way I had thought about it, is like, this is a me issue. This is something that's affecting me and something that's solely about me. And it's like, no, this is something that affects our relationships, the way we see other people, the way we see the opposite sex or the sex we're attracted to. And so it's just like, man, having to recognize that it and needing to be sensitive to that. Seeing them in their pain, being there for them as well, and not just making it all about you.
Yeah.
I would get annoyed when she would ask questions afterwards.
Yeah.
Like, oh, how often did you do it?
Yeah.
You know, is there a certain kind that you liked more, or you know, like, and I was just like, I don't want to talk about this. I just want to move on. Like, I would just immediately, you know, raise my voice, get mad, and kind of push her away, and then that made it really hard for a while. But.
Yeah.
Definitely want, you know, men to leave with hope. And so when you think about the things that have been most helpful in your journey, like it could be small things, could be big things.
Yeah.
But what are some things that have helped bring victory for you? Like, it's helped you be more successful?
Yeah, I think two things come to mind for me. I think the first, and we've kind of talked about this, is just sharing, being vulnerable, being raw. Like, Harry was exceptionally raw earlier and just ultimately transparent in his story and his experiences, and just making that like habitual in a lot of senses, in appropriate ways. But when you have the opportunity and it's appropriate to talk about, not being afraid to share and to invite others to come to you to talk about even your experience, not even like you then have to share about your experience, but just being like, I'm comfortable in this space and I want to have these conversations with people that need it. And the amount of freedom and joy that has come from like men coming up to me and being like, I've needed this for so long and I just didn't know who to go to. I had a boy when I was a camp counselor in Southern Indiana just come up to me. He's like, I've been just struggling with my sexuality for years and not knowing anyone to come to. And he's just bawling and just being there and recognizing that it just took sharing and being open. That's not only healing me, but it's helping to heal other people and connectivity, brotherhood. I think that's the love of God in essence. So yeah, just finding spaces to be able to talk about it appropriately. And then the other thing I think is just celebrating the wins when they come. Because I think for me, it's something that you'll go through like, you know, weeks, months of victories, and then you have like a setback. And it's really easy to focus on that setback and let that setback be devastating instead of recognizing the wins that have come from that. And, you know, when you do, you know, turn the phone off and don't go down that path, like recognizing yourself for that victory. Like for me, I remember just being like, oh, that's just what you're supposed to do. But it's like, no, this is a significant thing that's almost like a disease, and we need to celebrate the victories that come and just give our bodies, our spirituality, like the praise that it needs, as equally, if not more, of the amount of shame that we give it when we do fall into those patterns of, you know, usage of pornography. So really trying to celebrate the victories. Also, then lastly, is just trying to be wise in the people that you surround yourself in, the accountability partners you have, the friendships that you find yourselves in, downloading like software. There's tons of great software out there that can protect you and your devices, which I think are oftentimes the go-tos for a lot of this stuff. Just it costs money, but it's worth it. Like it really can be freeing. And like I remember feeling embarrassed. It's like I have to pay. This is a habit that's so bad that I have to pay. And it's like, no, but it can be that significant, and it's worth every penny for me. From my perspective, pouring into that security has been worth it. So I think those things have really resulted in a lot of freedom.
It's been cool seeing you like get rid of certain apps or download software. One lesson he learned along the way is to like maybe not give me the password for some of these. Like you install it and then give someone else the password, and then I would lose the password and he's locked out of his phone and can't get the thing.
God, if I want to get on Instagram, I need that password. Like,
but anyways, that the combination of sharing it vulnerably, accountability partners, and then software and different, like just tools to keep you, to create barriers so that you, when that urge comes, it's not quite as easy to get to.
Yeah.
But,
For me, being in the accountability group that I was in was the biggest help for me. That was 2 years ago. I still call one guy every week, and we just talk and kind of check in with each other. We're totally different people, personality-wise and background and stuff like that. But I just prize that friendship so much. Another thing that helped me, a little over a year after I'd been through the course and everything, I think God just kind of nudged me and said, when you talk about soundtracks, it's so important, what's going through your head and that sort of thing. And God just kind of nudged me, because it was talked about in our group to have these verses that we call them life verses, verses that especially help you, encourage you, but also maybe point out how to avoid what's tempting you most, or that sort of thing. And so I've memorized verses over the last year and a half or whatever. That has just been a tremendous help and growth for me.
That's awesome. One of the things that stood out to me, Dean, in your story was how you did go to some men, but then it just didn't feel like the support was quite there.
Yeah.
And, you then went to a support network outside of the church. And it really kind of impacted me to think, wow, we are not doing as good a job as we need to. And I think other men have had that kind of experience where they tried to reach out, and but people are busy, and it's just, and sometimes I think it's like, well, I don't want to deal with that because I'm carrying my own shame around it or my own struggle. And so I don't, but I love, and we'll talk a little bit more about it here at the end, but the class that we're doing and the opportunity to bring that kind of support here at the church for men to have it, because we need to step up and help. So
there's various tools that I've learned through that group that are good for when you're tempted, when you've had a relapse, then what do you do?
Relapse can lead to then just, well, I blew it, might as well, and then it's just this ongoing.
Yeah, and that's a big thing. If you have relapse, you aren't back to square one. If you learn from it and change what needs to be changed.
Yeah, that's good. Man. That's good.
That's something that fortunately I haven't dealt with. Being newer in the journey of getting better, because it's only been, I guess I don't want to say it like it's like I'm minimalizing it, but it's been 4 or 5 months, however long, but not that it doesn't come without temptation, but
how have you dealt with temptation when it comes?
Just try to remain intentional, if I feel tempted, or finding myself in situations that I would have done it before. Like I said earlier, being home, the wife's still at work with the kids, I'll go sit down with the kids, I'll go play, and I'll leave my phone in the other room, or just trying to be intentional about what I'm doing, where I'm at, and then also making myself bring it up to someone later, whether it be my wife or Luke. He's one of my big accountability partners, and I tried to build that village. I made it very known to a lot of people I'm close with, like, hey, this is what I'm dealing with.
Yeah.
Whether it be men and women, just like, I need your help. Like, are you willing to be there for me and talk to me through it if I need someone? And everybody's been real open, and a lot of it for me has also been falling into my faith. Like, I just I almost try to let it consume me, because I've never been really good at praying, but I think subconsciously I kind of pray in my head, like,
Yeah.
like, hey, I need some help here.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
You know, like, I appreciate you, I love you, I need some help.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. It's good.
but and that's still somewhat new for me sometimes too. You know, only being in the faith for the past couple of years, but it's just ever growing.
Well,
That's awesome.
that I can identify with a couple of those, like, I found that if that urge came, that temptation came, and I stopped and genuinely prayed, God, give me the strength to resist this, that He would. I mean, to the point that there were times I'm like, I don't want to pray. Like, I didn't, it was going to be I wanted to go down, you know, and like, because it worked. Like, it, you know.
Like, you should be that big father, like, you did that.
And the other that I really found was, so probably my greatest vulnerability would be when Beth is gone for a stretch of time. She's gone for a weekend, gone for a week, you know. And if I text a buddy or two ahead of that and say, Beth is leaving, pray for me during this season. There's something about, it could be their prayers that are doing it, but there's something about telling, again, it's not this secret thing like, you know. And then throughout that time, you know, to be able to text that same buddy if I'm feeling tempted, you know, and there's something about just sending that text that just, it has a way of, I think, kind of cutting the enemy off at the kneecaps. Like, it just takes away that temptation for me. And a lot of the blocks and filters and things that were, you know, I would give Beth passwords for stuff and set up things that were really helpful as well. Because a lot of the times when I would fail, it's like I didn't even go into it planning or wanting to. Right. It was that something came. Yeah. And then if there's that block, then it's like, okay, I can take a deep breath and get back on track again. So
I let my wife change all my passwords to something she knew. Obviously, I know them too, but and so it's a security.
It's amazing, you know, even when maybe you can see a temptation coming, just like you said about Beth being away and that sort of thing, and telling other people about it. So often, this friend of mine from the group and I will do that very same thing, and it's just like it removes the temptation, kind of sucks the air out of that thought or whatever you want to say, but it really does have power, and I'm so thankful for that.
Yeah. I'm into that. Wrapping up here, I think one of the other questions I would have is just, what have you learned from your journey? Like, how have you grown? Maybe it's even your relationship, you spiritually. Like, how has God used this in a way to help you grow?
I would say for me, I think my wife and I had a lot of issues outside of that, you know, in our marriage, you know, being a young couple, and you know, we started in high school, so kind of going through that, and then, you know, learning how to be with each other all the time, you know. So I think, you know, through this too, you know, my relationship with God kind of helped us kind of learn how to be, you know, there for each other in different ways. We ultimately just, you know, myself growing past this and, you know, growing in my own issues, but it helped me and my wife become closer. And I think in a way also lead to our children, you know, how to raise them better, to be more understanding. You know, obviously I know they're real little now, but kind of give us those tools for later in life, you know, how to do better. But yeah, I mean, my faith has been a huge part in my journey. So
that's good. That's good.
Yeah, I think I've experienced God's love deeper than I've ever experienced it through this journey and through this healing process, especially through brothers and sisters. Just like radical, no exceptions type of love, where you're sharing something that's absolutely devastating in your mind and your heart. A lot of times for me, it was catastrophized to where this is going to ruin everything. And not only my life, but my faith, my relationships, and to see people like you, people from church, family members, friends, just like acknowledge that pain, but then reassure that you're loved by us, you're loved by God, you're chosen, you're forgiven, like God is a God of grace, and we're going to grow through this together. and just that, feeling of undeserved love was like, I think the most like pure form of God's love I've experienced. And man, like when you have that, you want other people to experience it. And that's why it's so cool to hear about the resources we're providing, like with the class and obviously this podcast, but then like also encouraging everyone listening, like come up to one of us at church and like have a conversation with us, share with us. If you just like, I need just one person that I know is a safe space. Like it's amazing how much that can be transformational, as if you're like, I've been wanting to do this for so long, but I don't know who to go to. And we have this class. I think we have, all of us here can agree and admit that we're open to these conversations and to hopefully share God's love the way God's love has, been shown to us. And I would say the same as someone who has worked with our church staff. I'd say a lot of our church staff, probably all of them, would have the same type of heart. So it's a blessing to have that at this church.
Yeah. How about you, Dean?
I think one, it's helped me to become a lot more compassionate to people who have other addictions, and to understand what that struggle is like a little bit better, and to be able to let them know that there's hope, that they can be freed from what they're going through. I would also identify with what you said, Harry, too, about it's increased the intimacy between my wife and I. Our interactions are good. We can talk to each other about anything, and I just appreciate that so much.
Yeah, I would definitely say the same for Beth and I, and that would be one of the encouragements. I mean, it's so hard. I mean, if you're you're listening and you're struggling with this, and it's like, oh, I can't imagine telling my spouse. It is a painful conversation, but I think most people would say that at the other side of that conversation and working through it, and God's presence and the support of whether it's therapists or friends and family, like there can be a better relationship than there ever was. And it definitely was true for Beth and I. I feel like it opened up our ability to talk through hard things, work through hard things, and experience just unconditional love in a powerful way. And I think it was also a helpful journey for me. I mean, working through that, I mentioned like learning to be more assertive. Like there's just so many ways I feel like I've grown as a human being spiritually, accepting God's forgiveness, recognizing that messing up doesn't mean rejection from God, that there's grace. And so that's the hope in it too, that guys who are struggling or women that are struggling, that yes, it is a painful thing to open up and talk about, but man, there is healing that comes through that process. And it's not just you can survive it, but it'll be better at the end of that process.
You don't have to carry that load alone.
Yes, yeah.
Even for those that may not have God or want to be down that path too. I mean, you don't necessarily have to have that, but obviously, I mean, from our experience, it helps. But
it's a superpower that will help in the journey. But but
just
open up, talk about it.
That village,
and the village
that I keep talking about, from anybody.
Yeah, great first step.
And we want to be that village. I mean, I was looking at some statistics earlier that 75% of Christian men and 40% of Christian women report porn consumption on some level. So at least once or a couple times a year to daily, somewhere in that. That's a high percentage. There are other stats that would say if you're a practicing Christian, you attend church more regularly, you're more committed to your faith, that drops to 54%. But that's still more than half of committed Christian men who are wrestling with this issue at some level. And so that's part of the hope. And I think it was something like 10% said that their church offers help.
Yeah.
Wow.
So there's a lot of men out there feeling kind of lost in this. And so I'm excited about this class, 7 Pillars of Freedom. Anything you want to share about the class and explain what it is to men?
So basically it's a class that goes through the whole process of, getting to admit that you have a problem, first of all, and then going on to define, what's causing that problem. People often think, well, they have a problem with sex. That's why they have these. And most often, that's not the truth. It's that there is some trauma that's happened in their life. There were soundtracks that they're listening to that caused them to turn to something else. It's a coping behavior, basically, is what it is. And just enables us to search through that. And it's not a course that tells you how to do it all, but it opens it up and makes you question things and helps you learn about yourself. And through that and God's direct hand in it, you can be set free from what is bothering you. I
love it. I love we've spent some time this year with our mental health focus talking about trauma-informed care and recognize that, I think sometimes the approach of the church to certain sin has been essentially stop it. Just stop it.
Try harder.
Try harder.
Yeah.
And this takes a little deeper look at, that there are some issues going on under the surface and helping men figure that out. And it's not, I have written down here, it's 8 months, weekly for 8 months. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So this is a commitment.
It's an
intense program. And it is, I would say very, very well done, very successful in helping men through this. And so I hope men will take advantage of that. Start September 15th, 6:30 to 8:30 here at the church. You'll be leading that class, and you can go to our app to sign up for that.
There is a limited amount of people that can come just so that we can have a cohesive small group. If it gets too large, then, people don't share the way, don't feel comfortable in sharing, with a large group. Yeah. So, and this hopefully won't be the only time that we offer it, but we can continue to offer it so that others can take part, if so desired.
That's awesome. Well, I would love to close in prayer, actually, and just pray for those who are listening and just for this podcast, if I could do that. God, thank you for this group of men. I thank you for Michael, for Dean, for Harry, for their willingness to talk openly about their journey. Our heart is that this would enable other men to open up and talk about their own journey as well. My sense is you of that loving father who is longing for freedom for your children. And I just pray that those listening can sense your compassion, your grace, not condemnation, and that you would help men take steps toward freedom as a result of this podcast, and women as well. I don't want to leave them out of this because it is also a struggle for many women as well. So I pray that you be with us as men as we end this podcast. Sometimes the enemy can come pretty hard after we take steps like this. So pray for protection as we leave this place tonight. Pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Really appreciate your willingness to sit down, and glad we did this.
Awesome.
Thanks again for joining us for today's conversation. I hope you've been encouraged and inspired in your faith as we all journey toward becoming holy and whole together. If you're interested in more resources, please download the Maple City Chapel app, where you can find resources, more podcasts, and other content to help you in your faith. You can also join us on Sunday mornings here at the church or online at 8:30, 10, and 11:30. For now, let's go and be the church.